If you like what Justice Shaw says, he does have some signs and some stickers in the back as well for the election that's coming up on November 2nd. Next up, we're very pleased to have with us a very special guest. He is the President and Chief Legal Counsel of the Thomas More Law Center. And to introduce Richard Thompson as one of his former employees, also to recognize him here, former immigration candidate and Marine.
I'm here today to introduce my former boss and friend and mentor, Richard Thompson. Some of you will know about him, some of you don't know about him. And when I tell you a little bit about his story, you say, oh, that's who that was. Dick was a former Oakland County prosecutor for 24 years, 8 years as the Oakland County prosecutor. He took over after Marcel Patterson became the Oakland County executive. Dick is famous, in my mind, for two things in the Oakland County office. One is he went all the way to Supreme Court to make sure that the law in Michigan was enforced, that mandatory life sentences for drug possession was constitutional. And he argued that case in front of the U.S. Supreme Court and won. He also talked about the rule of law when against Dr. Jack Gordon. And he prosecuted him many, many times for killing people. He killed people that were, in bad situations, but were manipulated by a horrible man. And that man, Dr. Forkey, was prosecuted, and he was exonerated, or say acquitted many times. And so people would tell Dick, politicians and people that were interested in Dick's political career, don't prosecute him again. Don't do it again, because you're becoming unpopular, you're going to lose the next election. Dick didn't care about elections, he cared about the rule of law and what was right. And so he kept prosecuting. And because of that, he lost elections. And right now, in 10 days, about 10 days, we have an election. Elections have consequences. 10 years ago, or over 10 years ago now, there was an election that had consequences. Dick lost that race. Eventually, Dr. Forkey did go to jail for 10 years, and he was let out for humanitarian reasons because he said he was dying and I see him running around all over the place. But Dick, because of that, lost the election. Some people think losing elections is the worst thing that could ever happen to you. It's not. With Dick, he and Tom Monahan created the Thomas More Law Center, which is a conservative constitutional law firm. It is, in a lot of ways, the antithesis of groups like the ACLU. And at that time, there weren't any groups like that out there. There was a famous radical liberal lawyer a long time ago that was being praised by the press saying, "You won all your cases before the U.S. Supreme Court and all these other courts. What do you attribute that to? You being such a great lawyer?" And he would say, "No, I had nobody on the other side." Dick Thompson saw that and said, "We need somebody on the other side." So he created the Thomas More Law Center 10 years ago now, this summer. And for 10 years, they've been fighting a good fight, trying to enforce the rule of law, the constitutional rules that we grew up in our civics classes. Primarily, it's the Right to Life organization, a religious freedom organization, traditional family values, and strong national defense. Every single case that you hear out of the national media today, whether it's Don't Ask, Don't Tell, Arizona immigration, health care, to the bailout of AIG and Wall Street, the Thomas More Law Center is either involved or at the very forefront of it. It is my distinct honor and pleasure to introduce Dick Thompson, the former Army guy whose son now is at West Point, and my friend and mentor, Dick Thompson.
First of all, let me say it's really an honor for me to be here this afternoon talking to this Tea Party organization. It's a very patriotic organization. And it's also an honor for me to have been introduced by Brian Mooney. For the sake of transparency, I supported Brian in his race for the congressional seat. Person was. I keep yourself informed. And these days, you can't be informed by just listening to the mainstream media. You're going to be misinformed. So you have to do your own study. I don't know how many of you know about the beginning of America's Revolution. You know, one man started that revolution. And nobody knows his name. He was a farmer. And he was asleep in his log cabin with his wife and his children. And all at once, he heard the call of Paul Revere announcing that the British were coming. And this farmer had to make a decision. He said, should I get out of bed? And should I go out there and fight the British? If I get caught, I'll be hung as a traitor. What will happen to my wife and kids if I get out there? And he made that decision to go out there. He kissed his wife and children goodbye, grabbed his musket, and went on to Lexington Commons. And when he got there were a few other men there with him. The British arrived, these professional soldiers. The officer ordered them to disperse. And they stood their ground. This one man fired a shot. A shot that was heard around the world. A shot that began the American Revolution a year before the Declaration of Independence was even signed. No one ever knows his name. No one, maybe his neighbors did at the time, but we have forgotten that. And in a certain sense, the Tea Party movement reminds me of that one man, that common person that decided to get out of his cabin, to go and confront the enemy. This time that enemy is even more dangerous than the British because it is an internal enemy. It is an enemy within our gates. And so when you are here today, you are replicating what that lone farmer did starting the American Revolution. There are so many things that I want to say to you, but I think I'd like to start off with an ad that I saw just the other day. An ad that is really wow, because it really sets forth what is happening to our country. And I'm going to say a bunch of things about what is happening to our country, and I don't want you to despair, but I think we have to tell the facts frankly, so that we can then address those facts in the way that our founding fathers and that farmer addressed the facts that he was facing at the time. Now, what I want you to do is pay attention. This is in Chinese. What I want you to do is pay attention to the subtitles, if you can see them from here. I know this is not the best.
为什么强大的国家都会走向灭亡呢？古希腊、罗马、不列颠、美国，因为他们都犯同样的错误，与原来四方成功的原则背道而驰。美国政府几乎以庞大的开支和税收来摆脱严重的经济衰退，巨额的所谓刺激开支。 庞大的医疗改革，政府接管私有企业，债务归零。当然，我们是他们的大债主。现在他们都得给我们干。
Citizens against government waste to stop the spending that is bankrupt in America.
Gadgets have you bought that doesn't say made in China? How many toys have you bought that doesn't say made in China? How many articles of clothing have you bought that doesn't say made in China? And how much of our debt do they now own? prophetic, that time where we are now working for China. And you think China really is our friend? Their military is already preparing to fight a war against the United States. Our major companies are dealing with China, giving them all of our excellent electronic know-how. We've given them ways to counter our missile attacks. We keep on giving them our greatest know-how, and they're going to turn it around and use it against us. So that's just one aspect of what we are facing as a nation. So I have some questions for you. Has our nation abandoned the principles that fomented, that informed the American Revolution, our revolution for independence? Do we as Americans now still believe in the capacity for self-government? Or do we believe that an intellectual elite in the Capitol in Washington, D.C. knows what is best for us rather than we know what is best for ourselves? Those are some of the questions that we have to answer. Those are some of the questions that are going to be prominent in this election on November 2nd. Now, I've been a Republican all my life, but I think the issues that we are facing today transcends party politics. I think the danger here is, and many of you already know that we, the Tea Party movement, should resist being taken over by the Republican Party, should resist being taken over by the Democratic Party. Your guideline, your guidepost as to how you're going to be voting should be this. You stand with the person that is right. You stand with the person that is right as long as he is right. When he changes, you leave that person. Have we seen just recently when someone was, quote, Republican as soon as they lost the primary, switch parties or became an independent to challenge the Republican nominee? Okay? Parties, as Washington said, sometimes help out, but George Washington said also that they can be dangerous to our system of government because people become more loyal to